Hey everybody, I'm Katallina, and today we're here to talk about Episode 7 of Tower of God, Season 2. Today we saw Baam put into the crosshairs, much like Spider-Man was in one of the Spider-Man films from the mid-2000s, being essentially asked the pivotal question: save the woman you love, or let suffer the little children? In this circumstance, it's not so much necessarily just about saving a woman he loves, it's about saving friends that he's had in the past and that have immediate value to him, versus saving a little girl who is in peril in the immediate present. But the situation is essentially the same, and being the kind of character that he is, Baam ultimately decides that he is going to save the little girl and grabs her and blocks the damage from her, taking it himself and saving her life. This has consequences in a variety of ways, at least in the context of what we see happening at that moment in the story. As far as Baam knows, this move is going to cost him the fight. This move is going to cost him a victory. This move is going to potentially cost him his life, and even if it doesn't cost him his life, this move is likely to cost one of his friends theirs, and he has no idea which friend it will be, how it will happen, who will do it, or any way to do anything about it, because this is something that is being dangled over his head like a sort of Damocles, and it is how Fug is forcing him to behave in the ways we've been seeing him behave. Fortunately, through this action we see that despite the fact that Baam has become a much more capable fighter and much more calculated and ruthless in the things he is willing and able to do, we do see that the reason for that behavior and the morality of his character overall is actually not so far from where we left him in the last season. He is stronger, he is more focused and more in control of what he is doing, but at the core of who he is as a person, we see clearly that he is still the same compassionate and kind-hearted person that we met and loved in the first season. And that loyalty is something that we see reflected in the friends that he is making here, in the reality that the Fug person who came to see him and the person who trained him indicates to another person when they're speaking later that these new friends are just as valuable as hypothetical hostages as the friends that Baam made in the past. That this just gives Fug more targets that they can hypothetically destroy when and if Baam actually fails at a mission. And he's not wrong. Killing them outright now would be a waste, whereas killing them one by one can be utilized as another means of psychological torture and manipulation to ensure that Baam continues to do the things that Fug wants him to do. It's a very difficult cat and mouse game that they are playing, because if they outright just destroy everything that Baam cares about, that's not going to actually get him to comply. It's going to take away their leverage, and especially at this point, he's strong enough to give them 2 middle fingers up if it were ever actually required of him and able to do anything about the stuff that's happening. They have to be aware of that. But of course, there are going to be varying opinions, because the higher up levels of Fug are going to be made up of a variety of people, and different people are going to have different opinions. As far as I'm aware, there is not one singular person who has the final, presidential veto to be able to deal with the situation. We see a bit of that in how the behavior between the person we met last week from Fug and the person we see come out of the shadows in this episode are interacting, and that's quite interesting. Another thing that I think is really good in this episode is the way that these various new friends actually behave. It's really interesting to see Prince and the guy with the devil arm kind of arguing over how to deal with the situation as they flee the fight that's going on. Prince being shocked that they want to actually leave Baam there to actually do this fight, whereas the guy with the devil arm ultimately explains to him that he had no intention of actually leaving Baam, but rather that he's planning a different way for everyone to be able to help and attack, which they do. That's really interesting in this particular situation, because the characters in this new team are mixed between people who are actually powerful and reasonably good fighters in their own right, and people who, from a logical standpoint, I would argue have no business being anywhere near this situation. But from a writing standpoint, the presence of those characters and the fact that they are there actually heightens the stakes of everything that's going on and makes things much more interesting and much more personal and much more immediate and important, which is a good thing. It also highlights, despite the powers and the ruthless world that these people live in, that the people who have the strength in this group, despite that power, still maintain some level of humanity. When you compare people like the glasses girl or the little girl or the little boy who died in a previous episode against people like the guy with the devil arm or the gentleman who is very concerned now about looking after the little girl, or Prince, or any of these characters, we see this very distinctly. We also see growth in Flamethrower Girl. I think her name is like Yua or something. We see growth in her character as well, because one of the things we find out in this episode is that the thing that was happening in this area we are sent to for the mission is that these little piggy creatures have been being hunted so that these flowers can be rare and valuable, and it's actually her family who runs this floor. So the fact that people have found out about this and that people are doing this and everything is something she ultimately ends up finding disgusting, and she feels that her house has been dishonored by this behavior and she wants to make amends for it. This is ultimately used for comedic effect in trying to get her to do cooking, which was amazing because of course she is not a good cook. And one of the things I super like in this show is that instead of having one of the girls be an amazing cook, we actually see in a variety of situations that it's actually the guys in the group who tend to be good cooks. Baam is a good cook. I believe the devil arm guy was cooking the food we saw when people were actually eating, as opposed to whatever in God's name Yua was trying to make, because that was a hot mess and a charred mess at that. Like, that stuff was not going to be edible. But it was interesting to see how that worked, and then it was great to see that ultimately what she ended up doing to take a step in this new direction that she wants to have is that she, who is the person who is most suspicious of Baam and who spent a great deal of time in the last couple episodes questioning his loyalty, his motives, whether we should trust him, etc., is the one who is sitting there and watching him and looking after him while he is sick or injured, or however you want to put it. I thought that was pretty cool. Overall, though, I think that this was a quite good episode and I really enjoyed it. One thing I forgot to mention a moment ago that is important is the conversations that Zhao Wanyan is having with that guy from Fug, because the guy from Fug is interested in having Baam actually join a different team, and he wants these people to abandon Baam, but his friends don't want to abandon him, and this situation that happened in the cave has actually, at least in my opinion, likely solidified that thought and made that much more of a determining factor for them. So it's interesting to see that they have decided that they're going to do this, and that Zhao Wanyan actually tells him they've decided to do this, despite the fact that they are not necessarily strong enough to stand up against Fug on their own. And if Fug wants to, it could like literally just wipe them out in a finger snap. But despite all of that, they have consciously decided that they want to stay at Baam's side, and we'll have to see how things work out going forward. Anyway, though, those are my thoughts. I'd love to know what you're thinking, so drop a comment below and let me know, and I'll talk to you in the next video. See you later. Bye!